Imagine trying to catch a bowling ball that's thrown at you at like 60 miles an hour.
Oh, that sounds like a terrible idea.
Right. I mean, if you just stiffen your arms and brace for impact, you are going to completely shatter your wrists.
Yeah, the sheer force has literally nowhere to go but straight into your joint.
Exactly. So the only way to survive that kind of momentum is to go completely soft, right? You have to step backward and just let your entire body absorb all that kinetic energy.
That makes total sense. You have to dissipate it.
Right. And today, we are looking at something that proves why trying to be, quote unquote, strong or fast is actually the exact reason you're probably failing to learn that new skill you've been working on.
It really is the ultimate paradox of learning, isn't it?
Oh, completely.
I mean, we watch an expert perform, whether they are delivering a keynote speech or writing elegant code or even just hitting a tennis ball, and we are just captivated by their explosive power or that effortless speed.
See the end result.
Exactly. We assume that to be an expert, we just need to replicate that speed immediately. We completely ignore the invisible, agonizingly slow foundation that actually makes the performance possible.
Right. We try to sprint before we've even mapped the terrain.
We really do.
Well, we are pulling our insights today from a single, highly specific source. It's an audio recording titled simply New Recording 54.m4a.
Which is such a great, unassuming title for something so profound.
It really is. On the surface, this is just a spoken diary entry from a table tennis player named Cook.
Right?
And he is just reflecting on this mundane practice session with his partner, Epichart.
Yeah, just a regular Tuesday practice.
Exactly. But what seems like this niche breakdown of a ping pong drill is actually this profound masterclass on skill acquisition.
It really is.
It's a real-time account of someone decoding the absolute physics of movement and really the foundational rules for learning absolutely anything.
Let me think it all, yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this by starting exactly where Koch starts. We're looking at the microscopic physical mechanics of a block.
Which is honestly the perfect entry point. Because the macro lessons of how the brain acquires a skill are always hidden in the micromechanics of the body.
Right.
When someone engages in the kind of intentional practice Koch is describing here, they aren't just, batting a plastic ball across a net.
No, not at all.
They are running a highly complex physics experiment. They're manipulating all these variables like force, angle, biological timing.
So to set the scene for you listening, Koch is practicing with his partner, Epichart. And Epichart is driving the ball. He's hitting these aggressive forehands and backhands.
Really putting the pressure on.
Yeah. But Koch has constrained himself to a very specific role here. He is only practicing blocking.
Okay.
So his entire goal is just to absorb the incoming shot and place it back on the table safely.
Simple enough in theory.
Right. But he starts by analyzing his forehand block, and he realizes almost immediately that a successful block has very little to do with his arm.
Which is wild.
Yeah. It is almost entirely about his hips.
See, the human instinct, of course, is to block a projectile with the hand or the arm.
Right, because that is where the paddle is.
Exactly. If a ball is flying at your face, you put your hand up. That's just biology.
Yeah, survival instinct.
But Koch realizes that isolated limb movement is an absolute disaster in this context.
How so?
Well, if you just hold the paddle out stiffly, the ball hits the rubber and the energy has nowhere to dissipate.
Oh, like the bowling ball analogy.
Exactly like that. The ball just violently ricochets off the paddle and you lose all directional control.
So he solves this by mapping out this highly specific rotation.
Right.
To block a forehand, Koch notes that his body has to rotate to the right before the ball even arrives.
He's preloading the movement.
Exactly, preloading it. And then he has to rotate his hips back toward the ball with absolute precision, timing that forward rotation to match the exact millisecond the paddle makes contact with the ball.
We really have to look at the biomechanics of what is actually happening there.
Yeah, break that down for us.
By rotating the hips into the shot and then rotating back, Koch is actively increasing the duration of the ball's impact.
Okay, duration of impact.
Right, because in physics, impulse is force multiplied by time.
Oh, wow.
So if you can extend the time the ball is interacting with the paddle's momentum sphere, even by just a fraction of a second, you drastically reduce the peak force.
That makes total sense. He is essentially dampening the energy of the ball using his core mass, so he can actually manage its trajectory.
Exactly.
It is the exact same mechanism as catching a water balloon.
Oh, that's a great way to picture it.
Right. I mean, if someone launches a heavy water balloon at you and you meet the force head on with stiff hands...
It explodes everywhere.
Yes. You get soaked.
Yeah.
To catch it intact, you have to cradle it. You pull your arms and your torso back the moment it touches your fingers, absorbing that momentum through your whole body.
What's fascinating here is how this illustrates a physiological concept called kinetic linking.
Kinetic linking.
Yeah. To manage external physics, you cannot rely on a single joint. The brain has to build this deep internal map of the entire body working as a connected chain.
So the paddle isn't doing the work.
No, the paddle is just the terminal point. It's the end of a sequence that begins in the feet, moves up through the hips, stabilizes in the core, and then finally expresses itself through the arm.
That is so cool. And he finds a different but equally complex kinetic chain when he switches to practicing the backhand block.
Right, because the mechanics change.
Yeah, for the backhand, the hip rotation isn't the primary driver in the same way. Instead, Korkok discovers that the elbow has to act as this critical pivot point.
Interesting.
Yeah, the lower arm rotates around that fixed elbow, but it has to do so in perfect synchronization with his hips transferring his body weight entirely to the left leg.
Notice how the core principle remains absolutely identical, even though the specific joints change.
The interconnectedness of it.
Exactly. The isolated fine motor skill, which in this case is pivoting the elbow, is entirely dependent on the gross motor skill of the lower body transferring weight.
Okay, so the big muscles support the small muscles.
Yes, the legs provide the anchor. Without that stable base shifting his center of gravity to the left, the elbow pivot would just lack the stability needed to absorb the ball's heavy force.
Wow. But, realizing you need this massive full-body kinetic chain to perform what looks like a quote-unquote simple block,
Yeah.
it exposes a massive flaw in how we usually approach learning.
Oh, definitely.
It completely shatters the biggest misconception in table tennis and honestly in how we approach our careers or hobbies.
Which is?
We are obsessed with power.
Yes, we are.
Colin points out in the diary that players naturally prioritize raw power and speed over literally everything else.
And it makes sense why we do that. Power provides immediate, intoxicating feedback.
It feels good to hit things hard.
Right. It is loud, it is intimidating, and it feels like you are dominating the environment. But Koch's reflection emphasizes that accuracy is the true metric of mastery.
Accuracy, not power.
Exactly. And accuracy isn't just, pointing the paddle in the right direction. Accuracy is the physical manifestation of that complex eye-arm body-leg coordination we just broke down.
Right. So he argues that if you rely on power before you've trained your nervous system to map that full-body coordination, your shot might be incredibly fast, but it is deeply inefficient.
Because you are generating force without a stable delivery mechanism, It is pure structural instability.
Okay, let me push back on that, though.
Sure.
Because here's where it gets really interesting, and I can totally hear people arguing against this right now.
Let's hear it.
Isn't sports and, frankly, business and a lot of life, isn't it all about speed, power, and overwhelming your opponent?
That's the common wisdom, yeah.
Right. So if you just focus on hitting the ball accurately but softly, building this perfect little hip rotation, aren't you just serving up a slow, easy shot for your opponent to absolutely smash back in your face?
That's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah. Why not just hit it hard from day one and figure out the accuracy part later?
This raises an important question, and honestly, it is the exact mental hurdle that traps eternal beginners.
Okay, explain that.
Let's look at the underlying mechanics of failure to kind of dismantle that idea. Power without baseline coordination is essentially just a fast miss.
A fast miss. I like that.
Right, because the scoreboard does not award points for hitting the ball 100 miles an hour if it lands 2 inches out of bounds.
Fair point.
The body must first, quote-unquote, understand the movement. The neural pathways connecting the eyes to the hips to the elbow, they all have to be myelinated.
It's like trying to fire a cannon from a canoe.
Oh, exactly.
Right. The sheer power of the cannon is completely irrelevant if the foundation beneath it can't handle the recoil. You don't hit your target, you just capsize your own boat.
That is a perfect visualization of systemic breakdown.
Thank you.
Because when you introduce high velocity into a neurological system that hasn't established its kinetic links, the brain basically panics.
Oh, really? It panics.
Yeah. It abandons the complex, unfamiliar hip rotation, and it reverts to the oldest, simplest neural pathway available, which is usually just jerking the arm.
The survival instinct again.
Exactly. You throw your weight off balance, you tense your muscles, and the entire physical structure collapses.
Wow.
So accuracy is the only proof that your body actually understands the physics it is managing. Only when that proof is undeniable can you start turning up the dial on the power.
Okay, but knowing you shouldn't use raw power and actually stopping yourself from doing it in the heat of a fast-paced rally are two very different things.
Oh, for sure. It's incredibly hard in the moment.
Right, so how does Koch actually train his brain to override that primitive urge to just smash the ball?
This is where his approach gets really methodical.
Yeah, this is where his diary moves from theory to application. He lays out the specific environment required to actually learn this kinetic linking.
And what's his secret?
It requires robotic consistency.
Ah, of course.
Koch institutes a strict rule with AppyChart to solve this panic response. Both players have to keep the rhythm of the ball absolutely constant.
Because learning is heavily bottlenecked by cognitive load.
Cognitive load, right?
Yeah, the human brain has a very limited amount of working memory at any given time.
Like RAM in a computer.
Exactly like RAM. If the practice environment is chaotic, the brain utilizes every available slot of working memory just reacting to external threats.
So it has zero bandwidth left to observe its own internal state.
None. Zero.
Koch describes a really specific scale to manage this. Imagine you have 5 levels of power.
Okay, 5 levels.
If Koch and AppyChart agree to practice at level 1, they must strictly maintain level 1 force for every single shot. Forehand, backhand, it doesn't matter. The rhythm cannot fluctuate.
Because the moment the force fluctuates, say Apichark suddenly drives a heavy forehand, followed by this soft floating backhand.
Right, it breaks the pattern.
Exactly. Koch loses control of the ball's weight. And when you lose control of the weight of the ball, directional control vanishes immediately.
And then what happens?
The player is forced right back into survival mode. They are frantically reaching for the ball rather than executing that calm, coordinated weight transfer we talked about.
It's so much like practicing a complex piano piece with a metronome.
Oh, that's a brilliant comparison.
Right. If you artificially speed through the easy sections because they feel comfortable, and then you slow way, way down when you hit the difficult bridge, your muscle memory fails.
Yeah, you're not learning the song.
Exactly. You are just reacting note to note. You haven't internalized the underlying rhythm of the piece, so when you finally try to perform it at tempo, your hands just stumble.
Because the metronome is locking in the external variables.
Yes.
Koch and Apichart's level 1 rule does the exact same thing for their working memory. When the speed, spin, and force of the incoming ball are entirely predictable.
The brain relaxes.
Exactly. The brain no longer has to calculate where the ball is going to be or how heavy it is. It trusts the rhythm.
So it frees up processing capacity.
Yes. It can take its attention off the external environment, the threat of the ball, and direct it entirely inward.
He is literally buying his brain the time and space to actually feel proprioception.
Proprioception, yeah, the sense of your body in space.
Right. He can finally ask himself, am I pivoting my elbow correctly? Are my hips rotating before contact?
Which he cannot observe if he is scrambling to block a random level 4 shot.
Exactly.
Consistency creates the necessary mental bandwidth for physical observation. It really is a mandatory prerequisite for mapping the body.
And this highly structured, rhythmic practice naturally reveals the core thesis of the entire recording.
The big takeaway.
Right. We transition here from the hyperspecifics of a table tennis drill to a truly universal algorithm for mastery.
Let's hear it.
Koch breaks his progression down into 4 distinct, non-negotiable steps.
Okay.
Step 1. Start with light force. The goal here is exclusively to master coordination and achieve accuracy.
Stay at level 1.
Say at level 1.
And step 2 involves really dwelling in that slow pace. You use the low cognitive load to feel and map how the entire body works together. You are literally myelinating those neural pathways that connect the hips to the elbow.
Baking it in.
Yes.
Then step 3. Only when that mind-muscle connection is fully understood, you slowly increase the power. You finally move from level 1 to level 2.
But step 4 is the ultimate test.
Oh yes, step 4 is brutal.
The new, higher power must maintain the exact same accuracy as the lighter stage.
Right. If your accuracy drops at level 2, you have not actually mastered level 1.
And what do you have to do?
You have to swallow your pride, go back down to level 1, and rebuild the foundation.
Koch summarizes this entire philosophy with a single, profound rule, doesn't he?
He does. Slow before fast, accurate before powerful.
It's so simple, but so hard to follow.
It really is. You cannot bypass the slow, accurate stage and expect to achieve reliable speed. The sequence is absolute.
So true.
So what does this all mean for someone listening who will never pick up a table tennis paddle? Let's bring this right home to you listening right now.
I love this.
Look at the skills you are trying to build this week. Maybe you are prepping for a high-stakes, hour-long presentation to your company's board.
Or maybe you are teaching yourself Python to automate a workflow.
Right. Or maybe you are stepping into a management role for the first time and trying to figure out how to lead a team.
And the question is,
Are you trying to operate at level 5 before you've mastered level 1?
it is the most critical question a learner can ask themselves.
Obviously.
Are you trying to deliver this charismatic Steve Jobs-style keynote presentation before you've mastered the basic structure of forming a clear, logical argument on a single slide?
Good point.
Or are you rushing to write complex, multi-layered software scripts before you deeply understand the foundational logic of just a basic loop?
Right. Are you relying on the brute force of pulling an all-nighter to finish a project?
We've all been there.
We have. Or leaning entirely on your natural charm to navigate a difficult client meeting, rather than taking the time to build a coordinated, accurate foundation of true competence.
Because brute force might get you through one crisis.
The cannon might fire from the canoe once without sinking it.
Exactly. But it is exhausting. And more importantly, it is incredibly fragile.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that skills built on raw effort, rather than coordinated mechanics, will eventually break.
They always do. When the stakes are high, when a client asks an aggressive question you weren't prepared for.
Or when the market suddenly shifts.
Yes, your cognitive load spikes. And in those moments of high pressure, your brain will always default to your deepest foundation.
Wow, okay.
So if your foundation is just a series of chaotic, panicked reactions, a collection of those fast misses, that is exactly what will come out when you are tested.
That is slightly terrifying, honestly.
It is. True expertise in any discipline is rarely about doing extraordinary superhuman things. It is about executing brilliant basics flawlessly under immense pressure.
Brilliant basics, flawlessly executed. I love that.
Yeah.
That is the massive payoff of having the discipline to stay at level 1 when everyone around you is rushing to level 5.
Because when those micromechanics are deeply internalized, they eventually require zero conscious thought.
Right.
That is the secret of the expert. They aren't consciously thinking about their hip rotation or their slide transitions or their code syntax anymore.
It's fully mapped.
Exactly. The foundational layer handles itself automatically, leaving the expert's conscious mind completely free to strategize, to anticipate the opponent's next move, and to create something entirely new.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating look at the hidden architecture of learning.
It really has.
To quickly recap the journey we took through Kaig's audio diary today, we started at the micro level of a block, discovering that absorbing momentum requires intricate kinetic linking. Your hips, core, and elbows literally have to work in unison to manage physics.
Right. And then we identified the ego trap of prioritizing raw power, realizing that firing a cannon from a canoe only guarantees structural collapse. A fast shot without coordination is really just a fast miss.
Exactly. From there, we examined the absolute necessity of a controlled environment. Maintaining a steady, robotic rhythm at level 1 is the only way to lower cognitive load enough to actually observe and correct your own internal mechanics.
So true.
And finally, we arrived at Koch's universal truth. You have to go slow to be fast, accurate before powerful.
It is a blueprint that demands an uncomfortable amount of patience, honestly, but it guarantees a vastly higher ceiling for your ultimate potential.
Absolutely. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to really mull over today.
Okay.
Think about the level 5 masters you admire in your own field, the people you look up to, the ones who seem to operate with this effortless, explosive power, incredible speed, or just this undeniable magnetic presence in a room.
We all know someone like that.
Right. We watch them work, and we naturally assume we are witnessing raw, unteachable talent. But what if we aren't?
What if it's just mechanics?
Exactly. What if what we perceive as genius is simply the invisible, perfectly calibrated, level 1 foundation? A foundation they spent years obsessively mastering in slow motion, maintaining robotic consistency when absolutely no one was watching.
That's a powerful shift in perspective.
It changes everything. The next time you feel that familiar urge to rush ahead, to skip the boring basics so you can finally feel fast and powerful, ask yourself, have you actually earned the right to speed up?
Such a great question to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.